Chapter 1831. Hiya! She dashed forward. The dragon dukedom of Doragonia's dragon dukedom roared with a pitch-black greatsword in her hand. She dashed forward violently as if she wanted to squeeze out all of her strength. In front of her, the only male elf user on the continent gazed at Leola and gently raised the holy sword in his hand. In the next moment, the silver holy sword and the pitch-black greatsword both turned into sword lights. Clank! The pure white and pitch-black sword lights collided with each other, creating crisp clanking noises. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere, and phosphorescent godly power rippled like waves of ripples from the elven devices that collided with each other. Hiya! Leola roared like a huge dragon and instantly suppressed Noah with the help of the dragon attribute elven magic to strengthen her body. Immediately after, the pitch-black greatsword turned into an endless stream of slashes like a storm, swinging in Noah's direction like a torrential storm. His vision was already covered by the saber lights and sword shadows. Noah's pitch-black and deep eyes were as calm as a lake without any ripples. He gently raised the holy sword in his hand again. Clank! 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 If Leola's sword was like a storm that could tear a person's body apart, then Noah's sword was just the opposite. It danced in the void casually like a gentle breeze. However, even so, the storm-like slashes were still deflected by the holy sword, which was like a gentle breeze brushing against one's face. The melodious sounds of swords and halberds continued to resound in the air, which was exceptionally intense. Clank! 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 The sounds of swords and halberds didn't stop. Leola moved closer to Noah with an overwhelming aura. She then slashed out a torrential storm of attacks. She was like a crazed rock cutter, mercilessly shattering all the rocks, debris, and bricks in her surroundings. In the face of such a violent combo, let alone a human, even if a dragon were to barge in, it would be instantly engulfed in the crazily dancing shadows of swords and sabers. Blood and internal organs would splatter, and its body would be smashed into pieces. However, Noah was in the middle of it all. Although Noah had been constantly retreating to avoid being overwhelmed by Leola's astonishing arm strength, he was still able to receive Leola's storm-like slashes every time he swung his sword. Clang 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 clang. Sparks flew as the two swords clashed. Huff, 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 huff. The whirling elven device stirred up howling winds. One advanced while the other retreated, one attacked while the other defended, and they displayed an extremely intense sword dance. Everywhere they passed, numerous cracks were slashed open on the ground, and it was like a typhoon had passed by, causing it to be extremely shocking. Luminaris held her breath at the sight of this. It had to be said that the intensity of the sword dance had exceeded Luminaris's imagination. Initially, apart from Liena's Subble, Luminaris didn't take anyone seriously in this elven sword dance festival. Even though she knew that Noah had defeated Versilia and that Leola was the trump card of the Draconic Duchy of Draconic Kingdom, Luminaris didn't take them seriously and didn't treat them as formidable enemies. It wasn't that Luminaris looked down on Noah and Leola, but in Luminaris's heart, no matter how powerful Noah and Leola were, they couldn't be compared to the strongest sword dancer. Luminaris's goal was to defeat the strongest sword dancer. As such, Luminaris naturally wouldn't be too wary of the elven envoy whom she thought was inferior to Lien. She only took them seriously. Now, after witnessing the battle between Noah and Leola, Luminaris finally understood. Even if they couldn't be compared to Lien, they weren't existences that she could simply ignore. At the very least, the power that Leola displayed was enough to make Luminaris feel solemn. What made Luminaris feel even more solemn was Noah. Luminaris admitted that if she was in Leola's shoes, she would never be able to parry Leola's attacks so perfectly even if she didn't get flustered. She would never have been able to parry Leola's attacks so perfectly even if she didn't get flustered. However, Noah was standing in the middle of the stormy attacks like a rock cutter. Not only did he deflect all of Leola's attacks, but he also had a calm expression on his face as though it wasn't strenuous at all. Moreover, from the beginning to the end, Noah was only parrying and didn't attack at all. Thus, Luminaris immediately understood. He's going easy on me. Luminaris immediately denied this sentence as soon as it came out of her mouth. He's not going easy on me, Lien said calmly. If Noah had switched from defense to offense, the outcome would have been decided in an instant. If Noah was willing, the dragon lady might not even have the chance to attack and would be killed immediately. However, the dragon lady is a respectable elven envoy. Therefore, Noah probably wants her to retain some of her dignity, which is why he allowed the dragon lady to attack, right? Is that so? Luminaris said coldly. Isn't that going easy on her? He's just giving the opportunity to attack first to his opponent. It's not considered going easy on him. Once he switches from defense to offense, Noah will still decide the outcome of the battle in an instant. He's showing his opponent the greatest respect. Lien looked up and stared at Luminaris. I'll also give you the opportunity to attack first and decide the outcome of the battle in an instant. This is the respect I'm showing you in this elven sword dance festival. Is that so? Luminaris gripped the elven device in her hand tightly as the light in her eyes turned colder and colder. Then I'd like to see if you can kill me in an instant when you switch from defense to offense. As soon as she finished speaking, Luminalis also rushed towards Lotus like a storm. Clank! Following the sound of a collision that was louder than any of the previous ones, the storm-like battle finally came to a stop. Ha! 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 Holding the pitch-black greatsword tightly, Leola, who was holding it in front of her, still stared at Noah. Her chest was heaving up and down as she panted continuously. Obviously, the fierce attack just now had consumed a lot of the dragon lady's stamina. On the other hand, Noah pointed the sacred sword diagonally to the ground. Not only was his breathing not disordered, but his expression was still as calm as before. His performance gave Leola an unusual amount of pressure. At this moment, Leola felt that Noah was like a huge mountain. Not only was he majestic, but he also made her feel small just by standing there. This feeling made Leola tighten her grip on the sword bit by bit, and sweat began to drip down her delicate face. He's really as strong as a monster. A smile appeared on Leola's face as if she was trying to be brave. This is the strength of the elven envoy who can rival the strongest sword dancer? You're also very strong, Noah said sincerely. Among the elven envoys that I know, your strength is definitely in the top 5. You can be proud. Lien and Rubia were both extraordinary existences. One had the strength of the dark elven monarch, while the other had the strength of the 5 elven monarchs. Naturally, they couldn't be defeated by a human elven envoy. Gray and Vaz were known as the strongest elven envoys on the continent. The ultimate sword skills that they developed were used by Noah and Lien, so they were naturally stronger than Leola. However, apart from these existences, Leola was definitely the strongest elven envoy that Noah had ever seen. Even Versilia might not be Leola's match. Of course, this was referring to Versilia before she had a large number of spell engravings. Therefore, I won't show you any mercy. Noah finally raised the sacred sword in his hand and pointed it at Leola. Next, it's my turn. At this moment, a chill ran down Leola's spine. Leola's pupils immediately shrank. Whing! In the next moment, dense divine power erupted from Noah's body and surged into the sacred sword in his hand. In the faint sound of the air being torn apart, the godly speed thrust transformed into a lightning-like attack and flashed in the air. Ultimate sword skill. Primary form purple lightning. The silver sacred sword was like a thunderbolt, and in less than a second, it arrived in front of Leola. Poochie! Leola only saw a blur in front of her, and then her chest was ruthlessly pierced through. Intense pain mercilessly assaulted Leola's spiritual sea. Chapter 1832. The battle ended in an instant. Lying on the ground, Leola clutched her chest. Her face showed a little pain, but more than that, she was satisfied. Noah stood in front of Leola with the silver holy sword in his hand. He looked down at the dragon princess and spoke helplessly. "How was it? Did I satisfy you?" "Of course." Leola's breathing was hurried and her face was pale. However, the satisfaction in her tone was clear. "Although the result is depressing, you showed me the peak of the sword dance. With this, I can move toward the peak." She wasn't obsessed with winning or losing, nor was she obsessed with the result. She only enjoyed the process of the battle. As soon as the battle ended, the first thing she thought about wasn't the result of the battle, but her future path. How should he put it? Even Noah began to admire the princess of Dragon Dukedom of Duraguna. Noah smiled and said when he saw the satisfied look on the other party's face, "If there's a chance in the future, you're welcome to challenge me." "Of course." Leola gazed at Noah. Even though she couldn't stand up and suffered a crushing defeat, her eyes were still filled with scorching battle intent. "From now on, you're my target." Looking at the scorching battle intent in Leola's eyes that didn't diminish at all and was even denser than before, Noah shrugged and welcomed her in a dignified manner. Shing! The silver holy sword emitted a dazzling radiance and gradually shrunk into the shape of a silver dagger. "Thank you for your hard work, Aster," Noah muttered softly. Then, he sheathed the silver dagger and looked at Leola. "All right, I have to take your magic stones." "Those are the spoils of war that you deserve," Leola said matter-of-factly. "You can take them as you wish." However, Leola's voice became weaker and weaker as if she had recalled something important. Her pale face gradually became rosy. Noah felt strange. "What's wrong with you?" Leola didn't answer. She maintained her blushing face and glared at Noah fiercely before closing her eyes. Hurry up and take them." Looking at Leola's blushing face and shameful words, Noah felt baffled. However, Noah still squatted down and searched Leola's body. However, after searching through every pocket of Leola's clothes, Noah couldn't find the magic stones. This time, Noah was stunned. Why isn't it? Could it be that she didn't bring it with her? No. If she didn't bring it with her, she would have been teleported back to the Grand Altar. Could it be that they were like the elven messengers of the Holy Roha Kingdom, who had set up a magic spell on their bodies that would transfer magic stones to their teammates if they were defeated? But Leola wasn't that kind of person. "What are you doing?" Leola's face was still red as she spoke with her eyes closed. Hurry up and take them." "The problem is that I can't find them," Noah said in bewilderment. "I've already searched through your pockets." I didn't put them in my pockets." Leola's voice became as soft as a mosquito's and her face became redder. I put them on my body." "Put them on your body." Noah was stunned at first. Then, he thought of a possibility and the corner of his mouth twitched. His gaze shifted stiffly to Leola's ample bosom. "Leola, don't tell me you hid the magic stones there. Is that why you're blushing so shyly?" Noah was speechless and helpless. "How am I supposed to take them? Are you going to take them or not?" Leola opened her eyes and glared at Noah with a blushing face. "If you're a man, you should be more straightforward." Upon hearing that, Noah was amused. "Be more straightforward, right? No problem." Since the girl didn't think there was a problem, what was there to be afraid of as a man? With that in mind, Noah reached out his hand. On the other side, the battle between Lotus and Luminalis had also come to an end. Just like Noah, Lotus only endured Luminalis attacks and went into a defensive stance, completely deflecting Luminalis attacks. Unlike Leola, Luminalise didn't just attack ferociously. Sometimes, she would widen the distance and cast elven magic on Lotus. However, in the face of Luminalis elven magic, Lotus also released her own magic sword technique. Death announcing dark lightning. A pitch-black bolt of lightning erupted from the pitch-black magic sword. It flashed through the air and headed straight for Luminaris. Luminalise didn't even have time to react before she was struck by the pitch-black lightning. Beep beep beep. The violent pitch-black electric current surged on Luminalis' body and continuously caused damage to her. Oh! Luminalise couldn't help but let out a sorrowful cry. When the pitch-black electric current dissipated from Luminalis' body, she fell to the ground with smoke rising from her body. The winner was revealed just like that. Damn it. Luminalise struggled a few times but couldn't stand up from the ground. She couldn't help but have a regretful expression on her face. Undoubtedly, I have an absolute advantage in terms of attributes, but I actually lost so miserably. 3 years ago, even though Lotus had won against Luminalise due to the fact that their attributes were against each other, it was still a tough battle. 3 years later, Luminalise was no longer able to give Lotus a hard fight. She was defeated by Lotus in one hit. The gap between them wasn't small. However, that was natural. 3 years ago, Lotus only learned the ultimate sword skill under Grey and Vartha's guidance for a year. As a result, she dominated the Elven Sword Dance Festival and obtained the title of the strongest sword dancer. Now, after 3 years, under continuous training, Lotus's sword dance technique had already reached a level that shocked even Noah. It was far from what it was 3 years ago. Therefore, even without using the power of the Dark Elf King, Lotus could still defeat Luminalise in one strike. Moreover, it was under the condition that their attributes countered each other. Even without the power of the Dark Elf King, Lotus' strength was already much stronger than the rest of the elves. It was estimated that even if Grey and Varth recovered the strength that they had when they were the strongest elves in the continent, they wouldn't be able to defeat Lotus, who didn't use the power of the Dark Elf King. Naturally, Luminalise wouldn't be able to defeat Lotus either. "You're already very strong," Lotus said to Luminalise. "However, I'm stronger than you." After saying that, Lotus squatted down and snatched the magic stone away from Luminalise, who was extremely unwilling to accept the outcome. Buzz! After a while, a teleportation magic array flashed under Luminalise and disappeared on the spot with her. Buzz! Almost at the same time, not far away, another magic array flashed into existence, letting out a clear and audible trembling sound. Lotus looked over and saw Leola being teleported back to the Grand Shrine by the magic array with a flushed face and disappeared into the air. As for Noah, he was holding a magic stone in his hand with an awkward expression, as if the magic stone was hot. Under such circumstances, even the atmosphere in the air had become a little strange, causing Lotus to frown and approach. "What's wrong?" "No. Nothing." Noah coughed dryly as if he had done something shameful. He pretended to be calm and put away the slightly warm magic stone in his hand. "Is it over on your side?" "It's over." Lotus looked at Noah suspiciously and then gave the 3 magic stones to Noah. "With this, you have 11 magic stones. Winning the championship is no longer a problem." Noah took the 3 magic stones from Lotus's hand and turned to look at her. "What are you going to do next?" "I'll stay in the sanctuary for the time being." Lotus looked straight at Noah. "I look forward to the best news you can bring." After saying that, a teleportation magic array suddenly flashed under Lotus and turned into a burst of light particles and disappeared on the spot. Noah quietly watched Lotus leave. After a while, he raised his head and looked at the sky. Next is the real show. Just like that, the end of the competition slowly arrived. Chapter 1833. Clank. A pure white flash appeared abruptly in the space, illuminating the entire space. In the flash of light, several figures slowly appeared. Together with the magic array, they were directly teleported into this room. Noah felt that his vision suddenly turned pure white, and then he appeared in this room. Taking a closer look, he found that this was a rather grand and luxurious room. How is it? Are we back? Seems like we're back. We should be back, right? While Noah was observing his surroundings, the voices of several young girls suddenly rang out beside him. Noah turned his head and looked to the side. He immediately saw his companions. The group of girls also noticed Noah's presence. Their eyes lit up, and they quickly approached him. What? What's the situation now? Claire asked nervously. We should have returned to the floating island in the holy region, right? That's right, we're back. Fiona looked around and seemed to confirm something. She nodded. I came here when I was still Witch G of the Divine Rights Court. This is the audience hall in the deepest part of the Great Sacrificial Hall. Usually, if someone wants to see the elf concubine and is allowed to do so, the elf concubine will summon them here. The audience hall of the elf concubine. Alice asked in surprise and doubt. Why were we teleported here? Yeah. Lindsley seemed to be surprised as well. Also, it seems like only our team was teleported here. Why is that? The reason. Isn't it easy to guess? Noah curled his lips and smiled. Only we were teleported here after the elven sword dance ritual ended. The other teams weren't teleported here. There should be only one reason, right? Hearing this, Claire, Lindsley, Fiona, and Alice became excited. That's right. Since only Noah's team was teleported to the audience hall of the elf concubine, there could only be one reason. Right at this moment, a voice sounded. Just as everyone thought, the only people who will be teleported here are the winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Congratulations on your victory. Following this voice, a young girl slowly walked out from behind the curtain at the very front of the audience hall. It was a girl with waist-length black hair neatly combed into a braid. The young girl was wearing a bright red ceremonial dress. She seemed to be only 14 or 15 years old, but there was an indescribable majesty and nobility about her. It was enough to make ordinary people hold their breaths when facing this young girl. Although Noah's group did not hold their breaths, they were still shocked by the girl's appearance. That was because Noah and the others had seen them before. When the Elven Sword Dance Festival officially began and the rules and venue of the competition were announced, Noah and the others had seen this young girl among the 5 elven concubines who announced the oracle of the Elven King. That was right. This girl was Fairy Concubine. Lexia is still as cute as before. Senior Fianna. Lexia raised her small fists and bashfully pounded Fianna's back, making Fianna laugh non-stop. From this scene, it could be seen that Fianna and Lexia's relationship was very good. After fooling around for a while, Lexia sorted out her mood and smiled calmly at Noah and the others, befitting her noble status as the Fire Elf concubine. All in all, congratulations on winning the Elven Sword Dance Festival. The news of your victory has probably become a hot topic, and it should be known by everyone in the continent in a few days, right? Hearing Lexia's words, everyone instantly looked at each other. We really won. Claire seemed to be in disbelief. Won the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Lindley, Fianna, and Alice all looked uneasy as if they were afraid that someone would tell them that this was a joke. They looked very timid. Lexia only responded with a gentle smile. If you don't believe me, you can confirm how many magic stones you have received. Hearing this, everyone came to their senses. After we separated from Noah, we met 2 elven ambassadors from the Dragon Duchy of Duragonia and 3 from the Holy Caribou Kingdom. Alice took out the magic stones she had received. Because the 4 of us acted together, and each time we met an enemy, there were only 1 or 2 of us, so we easily won. We received 5 magic stones. Fianna collected the magic stones of the girls. Together with the magic stones from the 4 of us, we have a total of 9 magic stones. What about you? Linley looked at Noah. Did you get anything? Noah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the girls in astonishment, and then, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I didn't expect you to take care of the rest of the elven ambassadors. This way, our victory is indeed unshakable. Noah took out the remaining 11 magic stones, and under the shocked expressions of the girls, he suddenly smiled. After all, we defeated all the elven ambassadors of the other teams without any injuries. Chapter 1834. After separating from Noah, the 4 girls, Claire, Lindsley, Fianna, and Alice, defeated the 2 elven users of the Dragon Emperor Knights and the 3 elven users of the Saint Knights. On the last day of the competition, Noah and Lotus dealt with the 2 elves of the Dragon Emperor Knights and the elves of the Saint Spirit Knights. In addition, the leader of the Dragon Emperor Knights, Leola, was defeated by Noah, and the leader of the Saint Knights, Luminalise, was defeated by Lotus. The teams from the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia and the Holy Korea Kingdom were all eliminated. In addition to the Dragon Emperor Knights of the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia and the Saint Knights of the Holy Korea Kingdom, there was also the Purgatory Apostles of the Alphys Empire. However, in the Purgatory Apostles, Lotus, Lubia, Moya, Lily, and Sarah's magic stones all fell into Noah's hands directly or indirectly. They were all eliminated. In other words, Noah, Claire, Lindsley, Fianna, and Alice pocketed all the magic stones of the elven users of the other 3 teams in the finals. A total of 20 magic stones all fell into the hands of Noah's group almost miraculously. Moreover, it was under the condition that no one was injured. This fact made Claire, Fianna, Linley, and Alice look at each other in dismay, their faces full of disbelief. It can't be. Claire exclaimed in shock. Did we really defeat all our opponents without any casualties? Without a doubt, everyone in the continent has seen the whole process of the battle through the images sent back by the elves. You defeating all the elven users of the other 3 teams without any injuries has become a legend. Leisha turned her gaze and looked at Noah. Especially the battle between Lord Noah and Lord Liena Subble, as well as the battle between Lord Red Lotus of the Purgatory Apostle. Although the battlefield was covered in flames at that time, and the enslaved spirits couldn't get too close, the images transmitted back were a little blurry, but everyone saw the intensity of the sword dance between the 3 lords. It was really very exciting. Leisha's words caused the girls to be shocked once again. You met Lena Subble? Linley asked in an extremely uncertain voice. And you also obtained Lillian Ashubel's magic stone. Did you defeat the strongest sword dancer? I did defeat Lotus. Noah didn't hide and directly admitted. However, I didn't take the magic stone directly from Lotus. She gave it to me later. After Lord Noah defeated Lord Lotus, he didn't take the magic stone from Lord Lotus. Leisha seemed to be a little confused. On the day after the victor was decided, Lady Liena Subble suddenly assisted Lord Noah in collecting magic stones. In the end, she even gave the magic stones directly to Lord Noah. Everyone was puzzled. We just came to an agreement. Noah shrugged. Is this against the rules? The absolute sword envoy of black and white. Noah murmured. Maybe it's an ill-fated relationship. The black came from the Vorpal sword, which penetrates the truth. White came from the demon slayer. In the past, the fairy device belonged to the Saintess and the Demon King respectively. Now, in the hands of Noah and Lotus, it became synonymous. It was indeed an ill-fated relationship. Of course, the Demon King Lotus and the Saintess Lubia had always been together. That might also be an ill-fated relationship. No matter what, we won. Fianna smiled happily. There's nothing more worth being happy about. That's right. Alice nodded with a rare look of joy on her face. This way, everyone's wish can come true. Hearing Fianna and Alice's words, Claire and Linley's eyes turned red. Unlike Fianna and Alice, Claire and Linley participated in the Elven Sword Dance Festival because they had a wish that absolutely could come true. Claire wanted to know the truth about her sister's betrayal. Linley wanted to save her sister who was sealed in the ice spell. Now, their wish could finally come true. Both of them had the urge to cry. Seeing this scene, Noah's mood was very complicated. Noah could now help Claire fulfill her wish. But what kind of reaction would Claire have after knowing the truth? And Linley was even worse. The Elven King had already gone crazy. Therefore, whether or not Linley's wish could be realized was still a question. What's more, what Noah wanted to do next would eliminate their chance to make a wish. But even so, Noah still had to do it. When Noah's mood became extremely complicated, Laisha continued. In the evening, we'll hold a celebration for everyone. Nobles from all countries will be present. After the celebration, we'll be responsible for sending everyone to the Hall of True Sacrifice and making a wish in front of the Elven King. Please remember this process. After saying this, Laisha chatted with Fianna for a while before leaving Noah and the others alone. After Laisha left, before the girls were about to speak, Noah suddenly spoke. Everyone, I have something to tell you. Chapter 1835. The Elven King went mad. In the audience hall of the Great Sacrificial Hall, when Noah told the girls everything he knew, they were all dumbfounded. That red lotus is elder sister? Claire's delicate body began to tremble. An indescribably heavy atmosphere pervaded the entire audience hall. The expressions of the girls kept changing, their eyes filled with extreme shock and disbelief. It was as if their minds had been attacked, and they were stunned on the spot. I know it's hard for you to accept the truth immediately, and I know you won't easily believe such a ridiculous thing, but I have to tell you that it's all true. Noah sighed. It's not just me. Lotus also knows the truth, and even assassinated the Elven King 3 years ago. Her words are probably more convincing than mine. If you want to verify it with her, I can help you find her. Even that Lotus Asubble knows about this. Lindsley was truly shocked. Moreover, Lotus Asubble assassinated the Elven King 3 years ago. This isn't a joke, right? Alice's eyes were full of shock. The Elven King went mad, the Elven Mistress of Calamity appeared in this year's Elven Sword Dance Festival, and even the strongest sword dancer assassinated the Elven King. Is this all true? I can't imagine it. Fianna seemed to tremble, and her pretty face turned slightly pale. If it's really like this, then what about the witches of the Divine Ceremonial Court, who swore to serve the Elven King with everything we have? Obviously, the truth behind the Elf King's madness was a shock to everyone's mind. That was to be expected. If you told those believers that not only was God not merciful, but he was even mad and would destroy the world sooner or later, they might not believe you, and you might even be beaten up. To the people of this world, the Elven King, who governed the elements and dominated the world, was a godlike existence. Everyone was a believer of God. As such, how could Claire, Linley, Fianna, and Alice be willing to believe in such a ridiculous thing? They had been educated to believe in everything about the Elf King, so how could Claire, Linley, Fianna, and Alice be willing to believe in such a ridiculous thing? However, the girls also trusted Noah. They knew that Noah wouldn't joke about such a thing. Or rather, who would joke about such a thing? Not to mention, Noah also said that Lotus also knew about this matter and had even tried to assassinate the Elf King. The reason why the calamitous elf concubine betrayed the Elf King was because the Elf King had gone mad. How could they not be shocked? Then, where is sister now? Claire stretched out her trembling little hand, and tightly grabbed Noah's clothes. Her expression was no longer as stubborn as before. Instead, she looked like an abandoned little animal, and her eyes were full of fear. Is big sister still on this Saint floating island? I don't know. Noah shook his head. However, Lubius said that before we meet the Elven King and make a wish for the sword dance of the elves to end, she will wait and see. So, even if she is not on the floating island in the Holy Realm, she should be hiding nearby and observing, right? Sister is nearby. Claire bit her lips, and her pair of red eyes trembled violently. Noah could guess what Claire was thinking. This girl had always wanted to know the truth, just to prove that her sister wasn't an unforgivable sinner in everyone's eyes. Now that she knew that Lubia was nearby, Claire would definitely want to rush in front of her sister, right? Not only to know the truth, but also to see her sister. However, Claire didn't lose her mind. Although she had lost her cool, at least Claire knew that it was impossible to see her sister no matter how much she wanted to. Because, not to mention Claire, even Noah didn't know where Lubia was hiding. There was only one thing that could be confirmed. That was, Lubia must be by Noah's side, quietly waiting for Noah to take action. I chose to tell you everything, not to make you waver, but because I feel that this matter can't be hidden from you. Noah looked around at the girls. After all, after tonight's celebration, we will be able to go to the Hall of Truth to meet the Elven King as the winners of the Elven Sword Dance. At that time, I will make a move on the Elven King. I only told you the truth in order to not cause any chaos and unnecessary trouble. I hope you can understand. Make a move on the Elven King. Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice couldn't help but swallow their saliva. You want to assassinate the Elven King like Leanne Subble 3 years ago? Fayanna couldn't help but ask. Can you do that kind of thing? Yes. Yes. Alice couldn't help but say. We are only students. No matter how outstanding we are still humans. How can we fight against the rulers of this world? You don't want to reconsider. Linley lost her calm and said shakily. That's too dangerous. It's not just dangerous. Claire's expression became extremely complicated. If we don't do it right, we might be seen as a sinner who betrayed the Elven King like sister. Even if the Elven King is angered once again, would that still be fine? Claire's words silenced the rest of the girls. Although they still found it hard to believe that the Elven King had gone crazy, even if it was true, Noah's actions only meant one thing. He would become the enemy of the world. This was the consequence of making a move on the Elven King. Noah only smiled faintly at this. 3 years ago, Leanne assassinated the Water Elven King and freed him. If the Elven King wanted to vent his anger, he could have done so 3 years ago, but he didn't. This time should be the same, right? At this point, Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. Moreover, I won't be like Leanne and only release one Elven King. Chapter 1836. As the winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival, Noah, Claire, Linsley, Fayanna, and Alice were all accommodated in the High Worship Hall, waiting for the celebration at night. After Latia excused herself, she had the witches of the Divine Ceremonial Courtyard prepare rooms for Noah and the others. Thus, Noah and the others directly moved to the room assigned to Noah. However, at this moment, in the middle of this rather spacious room, there was a very complicated and mysterious magic array. Around the magic array, there were small altars. On each of the altars, there was a burning candle flame. And in the middle of the magic array, a young elven girl with water-like sky-blue waist-length hair was lying on the ground with a tranquil expression. Seeing the young elven girl lying on the ground, Claire, Linsley, Fayanna, and Alice looked at each other in dismay. Hey, Noah! Frianna couldn't help but ask. Is this child really the water elf queen? How would I know? Noah said irresponsibly. Anyway, that's what Lotus said when she saw this child. The elf queen of calamity also tried to kill her at the beginning. It wasn't easy for me to protect her. If you tell me that this child isn't the water elf queen, then even I will complain, right? Although that was what she said, Noah was basically certain that this young elven girl was the water elf queen. Not only because he had seen the water elf queen in the Hall of Truth and Lotus had promised to release her, but also because this young elven girl had mentioned that otherworld darkness more than once when her memory was stimulated in the abandoned city. That terrified look was still fresh in Noah's mind. If this young elven girl wasn't the water elf queen, even Noah wouldn't believe it. I know you don't believe it. Noah spread out his hands. In short, first use the unsealing ceremony to undo the seal on this child. When she recovers her memory, then the truth will be revealed. Or, is there a problem with the unsealing ceremony? There's no problem with the unsealing ceremony, but if you want to use the unsealing ceremony to undo the seal, you must know the real name of the unsealing target. Frianna said. If the name is fake, then no matter what, you can't undo the seal. Obviously, Frianna still didn't dare to believe it. In this regard, Noah didn't explain further and directly said. You can begin now. Okay. Frianna nodded helplessly. Then let's begin. After saying that, Frianna's expression became serious. That expression faintly revealed a noble temperament. However, that was the expression that a former fairy concubine candidate should have. Then, under everyone's gaze, Viviana slowly stepped forward and came to the back of the elf girl lying on the ground, facing Noah and the others. Then, Viviana closed her eyes and slowly opened her hand toward the elf girl lying in front of her. Thou, Isalia Shiva, is hereby liberated. The moment that clear voice sounded, Frianna's entire body fluctuated with dense divine power. Boom! The candlelight on the surrounding altars suddenly swelled like an explosion, igniting the altars one by one and slowly burning them. Clank! The magic array drawn on the ground began to bloom with dazzling light. The light was like a torrent, converging on the body of the elf queen lying in the center of the magic array. At this moment, the space around the elven girl suddenly trembled, causing her body to flash with a dazzling light. Ugh! The elf queen's tranquil expression suddenly distorted, revealing a painful expression. Seeing this scene, Claire, Linley, and Alice's group all trembled. It's moving. Alice cried out in panic. She moved. Stupid idiot. Linley seemed to be startled by Alice's shout. Don't scare me. That's not a doll. Of course she can move. Claire complained. Alice. Don't make a fuss over nothing, okay? Saying this, Claire, Linley, and Alice all became visibly agitated due to their nervousness. After all, the one lying in front of them wasn't an ordinary elf, not even an ordinary humanoid elf, but a god who ruled the entire world, the Elf King. If a god appeared in front of them, no one would be able to remain calm, right? At this moment, the group of girls fell into extreme nervousness due to their emotions. Only Noah, who was staring at the elven girl's pained expression, didn't miss the elven girl's soft, mosquito-like murmurs. Darkness. Darkness. The elf queen's delicate body trembled as she murmured in a dreamlike voice. Darkness is devouring me. Hearing these murmurs clearly, Noah's eyes rippled slightly. The excited Claire, Linley, and Alice seemed to have finally heard the elven girl's murmur. They all held their breaths. Darkness. Claire murmured. Could it be the otherworldly darkness that Noah mentioned that would drive the Elf King crazy? This means. Alice began to feel uneasy. Is this child really the Elf King? The Elf King. Linley looked at the child she had met by chance in the underground maze with a complicated expression. I didn't expect this child to be the Elf King. Fianna also seemed to be shaken, but she displayed the qualities of an excellent witch of the divine ceremonial court. After a while, she regained her composure and continued to pray and bless with her eyes closed. Under such circumstances, the light of the magic array drawn on the ground became more and more intense, and the surrounding altars burned even more fiercely. On the contrary, the Elf Queen's pained expression began to disappear little by little, and her expression returned to its original tranquility. However, everyone present had a feeling. Undoubtedly, it was exactly the same expression as before. Chapter 1837. In the room, an indescribable silence pervaded the air. Claire, Linley, Fianna, and Alice were sitting around a table, but no one spoke. Their expressions showed that they wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. They looked like they were in a dilemma. Noah was sitting opposite the group of girls. Beside Noah was the Elf Queen, whose real name was Asalia Shiva. Her real body was the water elemental that governed this world. She was also sitting upright. Her gaze swept across the group of girls. Brave witches, thank you for helping me. Unfortunately, I can't give you my blessings right now. I can only ask for your understanding. Hearing Isalia's words, the group of girls waved their hands and shook their heads in fear. We didn't do anything, Claire said awkwardly. It was Noah and Linsley who helped Madame Isalia escape. It was Fianna who helped Madame unseal. Alice and I didn't help at all. Yes. Alice lowered her head in embarrassment. Therefore, we don't have the qualifications to receive the Elf Queen's thanks and blessings. Please don't say that. I also didn't help at all, Linsley said dejectedly. It was Noah who helped Miss Elf. Madame Isalia come out of the underground maze. I only watched from the side. What I did was also insignificant, Fianna hurriedly said. I was only in charge of the unsealing ceremony. There are many people in the mystic ritual courtyard who can perform the ceremony. I just happened to help a little. Clearly, in front of Isalia, the group of girls still felt quite nervous. It couldn't be helped. Who told the person sitting there to be the Water Elf Queen? The Elf Queen usually stayed in the Hall of Sacrifice, silently managing the entire world. Even if there was something, she would give orders through the elf concubines who served her directly. Humans simply couldn't meet the Elf Queen directly. The only people who could meet the Elf Queen directly were the elf envoys who won the elf sword dance ceremony. Sitting at the same table and chatting with the Elf King like this was something that had never happened before. Thus, how could the girls not feel nervous and terrified? Of course, the girls would no longer doubt Isalia's identity. After all, the unsealing ceremony was a ritual magic that required the elf's true name to undo the seal. Since the ritual worked on Isalia, then the name Isalia Shiva was undoubtedly the real name of the elf girl in front of him. Throughout both the human world and the elemental elf world, there was only one being with this name. That was the Water Spirit King. He was the one who controlled the water element and stood at the top of the world. While the young ladies were panicking, Isalia said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance. You don't have to be so cautious. Although I'm the Elven King, I'm just a clone right now. I'm not the main body that governs this world." Doppelganger. For a moment, the atmosphere and the air became heavy. No one thought that Isalia was an alarmist. The Elf Kings brought great disasters to the human world. It had happened more than a few times in history. Storms, earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions. These great natural disasters, in this world, were almost all caused by something that offended the Elf Kings and caused the Elf Kings to be angry. Therefore, if the elf kings really went crazy and brought the disasters mentioned above to the human world one after another, the consequences, just thinking about it, made the girls shudder. If it's only a disaster level, then it's still okay. Iselia closed her eyes. If we elf kings continue to be eroded by the darkness of the other world, we will eventually destroy the world with our own hands, whether it's the elemental elf world or the human world. The cruel reality made the faces of the group of girls turn slightly pale. If that were to happen, not to mention the elves, even the humans would be heading towards the end of the world, right? Facing the disaster of the entire world, the 4 human elves were really too insignificant. So small that Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice couldn't even breathe. At this time, only one voice was still indifferent. Don't talk about the destruction of the world. The world is stronger than you think. Even if it's the elf kings, how could it be so easy to destroy the world? That one sentence made all the girls present, including Iselia, stunned. Without giving the girls a chance to react, Noah turned his eyes and looked at Iselia. After tonight's celebration, we will go to the Hall of True Sacrifice to make a wish. At that time, I will liberate the rest of the elf kings. The girls trembled. Even Iselia couldn't help but look at Noah and say so. Can you do it? Don't worry. Noah curled his lips and smiled. As long as the opponent isn't a human, or doesn't have a deep relationship with humans, then no matter how powerful the elf kings are, there won't be any problems. No matter who heard Noah's words, they would think that he was arrogant. If the elf kings were so easy to deal with, then why would they govern the elements and support the existence of the world? However, it had to be said that Noah's words made everyone's hearts surge with courage. Iselia looked at Noah and nodded after a while. At that time, I will also go with you. Noah nodded. Chapter 1838. As a result, time began to pass slowly, and gradually, dusk arrived. Not long after, the celebration for the winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival would begin. At that time, the various nobles from various countries in the human realm would gather at the banquet to bless the winners. That was the custom after every Elven Sword Dance Festival. Of course, although it was said to be a blessing, it was actually just a verbal blessing without any actual effect. However, at that time, the 5 elven concubines who directly served the 5 elven kings would also be present to provide the elven king and the winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival with sacred music, praying for the elven king to continue protecting the humans and to bless the winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Of course, the people who were busy with these matters didn't know. No matter how much they prayed for the Elven King's protection, if this continued, the world would sooner or later be destroyed by the Elven King's hands. As the saying goes, sometimes, ignorance was a blessing. At least, the people didn't have to worry about the unwarranted end of the world. They could still happily prepare for the banquet and enjoy the last moment of the Elven Sword Dance Festival. As one of the winners, Noah only needed to wait for the banquet to begin before making his grand entrance. That would be enough. Unfortunately, Noah didn't have the slightest interest in this so-called celebration. What Noah really wanted to do could only be done after the celebration ended. Staying in his room, Noah changed into his formal attire while holding the silver dagger and platinum dagger that were placed on the bedside table. Although it's troublesome, I still have to show my face at the banquet. Unfortunately, I can't bring weapons to the banquet. Noah spoke to the 2 daggers in his hands. Ashtar, Athena, I'll temporarily keep you in the gift card. As soon as he finished speaking, Ashtar and Athena's voices sounded in Noah's mind at the same time. I hope Master can quickly take me out. I don't like the space in the card. Ashtar, I don't mind. With your current strength, it will only be a loss without me. Sooner or later, you will need me. Athena, Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the 2 completely different answers. Immediately after, Noah materialized the gift card. After keeping the Demon Slayer and Heavenly Sword into the gift card, he cancelled the materialization of the gift card. In the absence of the Gate of Babylon, the convenience of the gift card will be revealed. The function of the gift card was almost the same as the Gate of Babylon, which was a treasure trove. The difference was that the gift card could not be used like the Gate of Babylon, which could open the entrance of the treasury at any time and place, and use the weapons in the treasury as throwing props. However, the gift card was not inferior in terms of its function as a treasury. After all, the space in the gift card was also unlimited. Although it could only store gifts and daily necessities, it was much more convenient for storing items than carrying them around. As for the gift card itself, it could be instantiated or cancelled at any time. The way to carry the gift card differed from person to person. Some people would choose to put the gift card in a safe place and summon it and send it back at any time. Some people would choose to vaporize the gift card and merge it into the space. Even if it was somewhere else, it could still be materialized at any time. Noah's way of carrying the gift card was to merge it into his body. After all, Noah often needed to travel between different worlds. If he used the two methods mentioned above, he would not be able to summon and materialize it through the world's barrier. Therefore, merging it into his body was undoubtedly a good method. After putting away the elven device and cancelling the gift card and merging it into his body, Noah looked at the sky. It was dusk. The celebration would be held at night. There was still plenty of time. There's still some time. I'll go check on that silly girl. After saying this, Noah walked out of the room and headed in another direction. Because they were all winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival, the distance between Noah's room and the other girl's room was not too far. Although the area of the great sacrificial hall was quite large, Noah only took 30 seconds of slow walking to reach the door of his destination. Looking at the door in front of him, Noah reached out his hand. But before he could knock on the door, a voice came from inside the door. "Sister. Congratulations on winning." "Thank you, Milleryu." "Lin Silei, congratulations on winning." "Thank you, Mila." Sob sob sob, it's great that Milady won. Don't cry, Carol. It's embarrassing. Upon hearing the voice coming from the room, Noah couldn't help but laugh. He didn't knock on the door and just said, "Come in." "Lindsley, I'm coming in." Suddenly, the sound in the room disappeared. "Noah. Noah." Lindsley's voice changed. "Wait. Wait." However, before Lindsley could say anything, Noah had already opened the door and barged in. The next moment, Noah saw a scene that made Noah's eyes light up. He saw that in the middle of Lindsley's room, a real Milady was standing there. She wasn't wearing her usual Elven Academy uniform. Instead, she was wearing a navy blue evening gown. Her dazzling light blonde hair was tied up. She seemed to have put on some light makeup on her delicate face, making her lovable face even more gorgeous and moving. As for her pink lips, she seemed to have applied some lipstick, giving her lips a rose-like color, which made her look quite charming. Such a well-dressed Milady suddenly entered Noah's eyes, making Noah stunned. "Really? Really?" Lindsley called out shyly. "Didn't I tell you to wait?" "Why?" Noah walked in, praising as he walked. "Doesn't it look good?" "But, I was going to wait until the banquet started to show you." Lindsley puffed up her cheeks as if she was throwing a tantrum. "Then there won't be any surprises." "What are you talking about?" Noah praised. "I'm already surprised enough, really." Is that so?" Lindsley was a little embarrassed, turning her head away. "Hee hee." Carol snickered at the side. Milady really wants Mr. Noah to see this outfit the most. "Carol." Lindsley's face was red as she hammered Carol's back. A petite girl next to Carol trotted over and threw herself into Noah's arms. Brother Noah. Her small head buried directly into Noah's abdomen, almost knocking Noah over. Milady. Lindsley said angrily. You can't do this kind of unladylike behavior. However, Milady completely ignored her sister. She raised her head and smiled at Noah like a flower. I watched all of Brother Noah's matches. It was really amazing. Brother's sword dance was really, really cool. Really? Noah smiled and patted Milady's head. Did you like it? I did, Milady said bluntly. And Mira liked it too. Just as she finished speaking, the back of her collar was grabbed by Mira, who suddenly appeared behind her and lifted her up. Congratulations on winning, Noah. Mira ignored the struggling Milady, and a rare smile appeared on her pretty face. Your sword dance was really amazing. You even defeated the strongest sword dancer and received the same honor as Liana Subble. It's really amazing. The absolute sword envoy of Black and White, this title will soon be known throughout the continent. Carol said with a smile. Mr. Noah will soon have a lot of fans. Like the strongest sword dancer, he will become the idol of all the elves on the continent. And, brother also helped sister win. Milady's smile became even brighter. This way, Sister Yudia will be able to come out of the cursed ice. Lindsley's expression instantly froze. The atmosphere became uncomfortable. Don't worry. Noah squatted down and reached out his hand to pat Milady's head. Lindsay Lay will definitely save your second sister. Malayu nodded heavily, her little face brimming with happiness. On the other hand, Lindley's expression became extremely complicated. Eldest Miss. Carol noticed Lindley's expression and asked curiously. What's wrong? Lindley didn't seem to know how to answer Carol's question and fell silent for a moment. This made Carol worried instead. Even Milieu blinked her eyes and moved forward in confusion. Sister. What's wrong? Before Milieu could reach Lindley, Mira stepped forward and held her hand. Lindley should have something important to discuss with Noah. Let's go out first and not disturb them. Mira seemed to have noticed something. Although she was very young, only 13 years old, Mira was appointed as the leader of the Lipa division by the Russell Bell Duchy. Her mind was much better than the average person of her age. Sensing that Noah and Lindley seemed to be hiding something, Mira very considerately covered for the two of them. Is that so? Milieu didn't seem to suspect anything and nodded repeatedly. Then we'll go out first. Yes. Carol took Milieu's other hand and winked mischievously at Noah. We'll go out first and not disturb Mr. Noah and eldest Miss relationship. This trashy maid who even needs her master to take care of her meals and sleep misunderstood. Mira only glanced at Noah and nodded at Noah. Then, Mira, Carol, and Milieu walked out of Lindley's room while laughing and chatting. The entire room returned to silence. Noah and Lindley could only watch the three girls leave. For a moment, they didn't say anything, causing the silent atmosphere to become somewhat uncomfortable. After a while, Lindley spoke with a complicated expression. I don't know how to tell Milieu about Yudia. I know. Noah nodded without any surprise. If it were me, seeing my sister so happy and looking forward to it, I wouldn't have the heart to disappoint her. What should I do? Lindley's eyes began to fill with tears. Even Lady Isalia can't break the cursed ice, then what can we do to save Yudia? Isalia just hasn't recovered her strength yet. It's not impossible to save your sister. Noah turned his head and looked at Lindley. When everything is over, your sister will naturally be rescued from the cursed ice. Everything is over. How long do we have to wait? Lindley said with some sadness. Even the Elven King can't deal with that otherworldly darkness. Even if Lady Isalia recovers her strength, can she resist the erosion of the otherworldly darkness and end everything? That's something I need to consider. Noah smiled indifferently. You just need to quietly wait for the good news. Wait? Lindley was a little anxious. But I've already waited. Before she could finish her sentence, I couldn't speak anymore. Because Noah suddenly stretched out a finger and covered Lindley's rosy lips. While Lindley was still in a daze, Noah looked directly at the girl in front of him. His eyes were like gemstones, and his dark pupils seemed to be able to suck people in, shining like the stars in the sky. Looking at Noah like this, Lindley couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. Immediately, Noah opened his mouth. Do you still remember what happened in the kitchen when we returned to the academy? Noah's words made Lindley come back to her senses, and her pretty face turned red. Not only did she feel embarrassed for looking at Noah's intoxicated past, but she also felt ashamed when she recalled what happened at that time. How could Lindley forget what happened at that time? Because that was the only time in the life of this rich young miss being kissed by the opposite sex. That was Lindley's first kiss. Moreover, the significance of kisses to elves and elven envoys was equally extraordinary. Kissing is the most sacred contract and ritual. Noah smiled slightly, and his finger gently rubbed Lindley's seductive lips. At that time, I made a contract with you that I would definitely win the Elven Sword Dance Festival and save your sister. Now, the victory of the Elven Sword Dance Festival has been obtained, and the only thing left is to save your sister. Noah looked at Lindley, and said word by word. At that time, I will abide by the contract. After tonight, I will let everything end, so leave your sister to me. Noah's words made Lindley's gaze unable to leave Noah's face. Lindley's pretty face was slightly red, and in the end, she only said this sentence. Can I trust you? Hearing this, Noah shrugged. Why don't you let me swear the oath again? After speaking, Noah held Lindley's little hand, and gently kissed the back of her hand. Your sister will definitely be saved, trust me. Lindley's cheeks became even redder. However, that delicate and pretty face was like a blooming flower, and a beautiful smile appeared on it. Chapter 1840. Night gradually arrived. With the arrival of the night, the nobles from the various countries of the continent began to appear one by one in the hall of the great sacrificial hall. It was different from the previous competitions. At this moment, the hall of the great sacrificial hall wasn't decorated to be as lively and solemn as a festival. Instead, it was decorated to be like a ball. On the ceiling, the chandelier made of elven ore emitted a gentle light. The surrounding walls were covered with luxurious hanging curtains. The floor was covered with a red carpet that people couldn't bear to step on. Long tables were placed in every corner of the hall, with plates of dishes and bottles of fine wine placed on them. The atmosphere was completely different from the previous lively atmosphere. However, with the appearance of the nobles one by one, the scene gradually became more lively. Everyone was happily discussing the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Even though there weren't any vulgar people present and the discussion wasn't that intense, one could more or less understand the emotions of the nobles who were dressed in formal attire and had impassioned expressions. There was only one topic that everyone was discussing. I didn't think that the Osea Empire would win this year's Elven Sword Dance Festival. When I heard that the strongest sword dancer didn't represent the Osea Empire, I thought that the Osea Empire wouldn't be able to win this time. In the end, the Osea Empire still won. Should I say, as expected of the strongest country on the continent that is on par with the Holy Taija Kingdom? Including this year's Elven Sword Dance Festival, the Elven Sword Dance Festival had been held 4 times in the past 30 years. The first time was 24 years ago and the winner was the 15-year-old Grey Vass. The second time was 15 years ago and the winner was an elven envoy from the Holy Taija Kingdom. The third time was 3 years ago and the winner was Lotus who represented the Osea Empire. The fourth time was this year and the winners were Noah, Claire, Lindley, Fayanna, and Alice. In other words, including this year's Elven Sword Dance Festival, the Osea Empire had won 3 times in the past 30 years. However, that didn't mean that the Osea Empire was amazing. What good luck, Osea Empire. Exactly. No matter if it's the strongest sword dancer or that male elf, strictly speaking, they're not from the Audiobook Empire. But both of them represented the Audiobook Empire in the Elven Sword Dance Festival and even won. If it wasn't for the Dusk Witch holding the fort, I'm afraid the kingdom of Audiobook would be finished. Not to mention, the lost elf concubine of the Audiobook Empire's royal family is also part of the winning team. Previously, we were abandoned by the royal family of the Audiobook Empire, but this time, we won a beautiful victory. I'm afraid the royal family won't look good, right? Using the same sword dance as the strongest sword dancer, Noah's status in everyone's hearts rose steadily, and he had many fans. Back then, Lotus had captured the hearts of all the elf users with her gorgeous and wonderful sword dance. Now, Noah had displayed his skills in the Elf Sword Dance Festival and even won. Naturally, those innocent ladies had a whole new level of respect for him. However, Noah did not pay attention to those ladies who were talking about him. Instead, he looked around the venue. The hall was not only filled with nobles from various countries, but also the contestants of the Elf Sword Dance Festival. Whether it was the preliminaries or the finals, all the elf users who attended the Elf Sword Dance Festival seemed to have participated in this celebration. Because, after the celebration, the Elf Sword Dance Festival would officially come to an end. Therefore, those contestants who did not attend the dance and the festival before also went on stage and would return to their countries in a few days. Among them, Noah also saw many familiar faces. However, he could not find the person he was looking for. Linley seemed to know who Noah was looking for and could not help but speak. Are you looking for Lady Lotus Asubble? Before the competition ended, Lotus said that she would temporarily stay on the floating island until Noah went to the Hall of True Sacrifice to see the Elf King. Therefore, Noah also wondered if he could see Lotus here. Unfortunately, Lotus still did not come. Lotus was not the only one who did not come. The members of the Purgatory Apostles, who represented the Alphys Empire to attend the Elf Sword Dance Festival, also did not come. As expected, those people won't come, right? Noah shrugged. Other than Lotus, almost everyone else can't be seen in the light. We have no choice but to appear. Linley pursed her lips. After a while, when the elf concubines are done with the sacrifice, we have to go to the Hall of True Sacrifice to see the Elf King. As he said that, Noah clearly felt it. Linley's hand that was still in his arm seemed to be trembling slightly. Was it nervousness? Or fear? Noah did not know. However, Noah would not be surprised. Because, next, everyone would not be meeting the Elf King who could fulfill everyone's wishes, but a group of madmen who would sooner or later destroy the world. Whether it was nervousness or fear, it was human nature. Noah could only gently hold Linley's little hand and said so. Don't worry, Isalia will be there. Even if she has lost most of her power, it should not be a problem to ensure your safety. Before Linley could answer, another voice sounded behind Noah. Are you in any trouble? Chapter 1841. The sudden voice startled both Noah and Linley. They immediately turned around and looked behind them. In the next moment, both Linley and Noah were completely stunned. Behind Noah and Linley, a gorgeously dressed young lady was standing there. It was a beautiful young lady in a purple evening gown. The evening gown on the young lady was the type that exposed her slender shoulders and had some embellishments in the front. Her voluptuous upper body and beautiful figure were perfectly accentuated. Many of the male nobles in the hall couldn't help but turn their gazes over with some amazement in their eyes. However, Noah wasn't stunned because of the young lady's beauty. In Noah's impression, the young lady in front of him was radiant with a valiant and battle-hardened side. She wasn't like the refined young lady of a noble family who displayed an incomparably gentle side. The newcomer was Her Highness the Dragon Dukedom of Doragonia Leola. You. Noah said almost subconsciously. Why are you dressed like this? Is it strange for me to dress like this? Leola's beautiful pair of brows furrowed slightly. Since it's a ball, isn't it normal to wear an evening gown? That's true. Noah scratched his cheeks and laughed bitterly. It's just that I didn't expect you to wear an evening gown. I thought you would hate to dress like this. For a knight and warrior like Leola who followed her battle instincts, in Noah's opinion, even if she was allowed to wear an evening gown, she would definitely refuse to wear it with the reason of, it's inconvenient to move around and won't do any good in battle. Forget it. Therefore, Leola's valiant appearance really surprised Noah. Meanwhile, Leola's brows furrowed deeper and deeper as she spoke expressionlessly. I know that this dress doesn't suit me. It's normal for you to feel strange. No, you're mistaken. Noah expressed his thoughts frankly. It looks pretty good on you. Remember to wear it often in the future. Wah. Leola's expressionless appearance disappeared without a trace. Her beautiful face couldn't help but blush. Don't think that you can make me happy with your flowery words. I won't fall for it. Although that was what she said, Leola's behavior didn't seem like she could remain calm. Noah looked at Leola with interest, but in the next second, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in the soft flesh of his waist. Humph. Lynn Siley snorted coldly and turned her head away. Her delicate face was filled with hatred that anyone could see. Noah could only bitterly touch his soft flesh that had been pinched so hard that it hurt. Could it be that this girl also thinks that I'm just using flowery words to deceive this innocent little girl? Even the heavens could take pity on. Moreover, if he didn't say that, he would be embarrassed himself. After all, during the Elven Sword Dance Festival, Noah had taken advantage of Leola in order to obtain the magical stones on her body after the battle was decided. Therefore, he should at least say a few nice words, right? Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but glance at Leola's ample bosom before quickly shifting his gaze away. He had to admit that this Dragon Duchess of the Dragon Duchy of Laguna was really something. How did I reach my hand out so calmly at that time? She didn't seem to be that calm. Just as Noah was bitterly touching his waist, Leola finally came to her senses. She coughed dryly and looked at Noah. I think I will remember the sword dance with you for the rest of my life. Now that you are on par with the strongest sword dancer, I don't know if I will have the chance to spar with you in the future. So, allow me to bring up an old matter. Bring up an old matter. Noah raised his brows. Are you referring to the matter we talked about previously? That's right. Leola nodded. Let me ask you one more time. Do you want to come to the Dragon Duchy of Laguna? Leola's words made Noah's expression turn strange. I am not proposing. Looking at Noah's strange expression, Leola seemed to have recalled something important. She blushed and glared at Noah. Although I can't deny that the Dragon King will let us marry in order to give birth to better offspring, it isn't absolute. There are many outstanding Magus concubines in the Dragon Duchy of Laguna. They definitely won't disappoint you. Many Magus concubines. Won't disappoint me. Noah couldn't help but ask. Why do you sound like a pimp? Pimp. Leola was slightly taken aback, and asked in confusion. What's a pimp? Noah's mouth twitched, and he sighed. No, it's nothing. I feel like you've said something rude. Leola knitted her brows again, but she didn't continue to dwell on it. Be it as a spirit envoy or as a man, in my opinion, you are extremely outstanding. Therefore, I sincerely hope that you can come to our Dragon Duchy of Laguna. If possible, I hope you can give me good news. As Leola spoke, she stared at Noah from the beginning to the end. Her attitude was still the same as before. She was very open and aboveboard, making it hard for Noah to feel disgusted by her. At that moment, Linley finally reacted to the situation. Wait. Wait. Linley couldn't help but take a step forward and yell. What do you mean by a proposal? When these words came out of Lindsay Lay's mouth, the whole place suddenly went silent. The nobles who were conversing in the surroundings stared at her in bewilderment. After a few moments of silence, they burst into an uproar. Proposal? Is there a proposal over there? Someone is proposing to sword emissary by Jew of the black and white sword emissaries? Could it be that young lady? Isn't that the Princess of Dragon Duchy of Laguna? No matter what, we're teammates. Linley smiled sweetly. In the academy, we obtained the qualifications to participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival together. In the Elven Sword Dance Festival, we won together. If you plan to save the world, then we have no reason to stand by and do nothing. Although we can't be sure if we can help, we're all winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival. If we don't meet the Elven King, the divine ceremonial courtyard will definitely be the first to make things difficult for us. They'll think that we're being disrespectful, right? Viviana said sarcastically. It's a pity that they still don't know that the person they're serving is no longer normal. If possible, I also hope to be able to witness it to the end. Claire's tone became resolute. 4 years ago, when Sister barged into the great sacrificial hall, I want to personally confirm with my own eyes what exactly you saw. After saying that, the group of girls looked at each other, and shortly after, they all looked at Noah and said in unison. So, we'll go with you. Hearing that, Noah's eyes flickered and he suddenly felt enlightened. Although these teammates of his were all pampered and noble young ladies, they weren't as weak as he had imagined. Because her sister betrayed the Elven King, Claire had been deprived of everything by her side. For 4 years, she had been troubled and looked at differently by others. She had already honed a strong heart. Linley looked like a pampered young lady, but not only was she gentle and virtuous, but she had also experienced the incident of her close relative being frozen by the mad Elven King. She also had a part of her perseverance. Like Claire, Viviana had been neglected by the royal family after being reduced to a lost elven concubine. She was looked at strangely by others, and her body and mind had been tempered. As for Alice, she didn't seem to have anything special about her, but she was also born in a family of warriors. Her respected sister had once been led astray, and it wasn't that she hadn't encountered adversity. Although these girls were incomparably pure in body and mind, it didn't mean that they would escape from suffering. In this regard, Noah could only smile. Then, let's go together. Claire, Linley, Viviana, and Alice immediately smiled and nodded heavily. At this moment, on the altar, the elven concubine's voice resounded. The sacrificial ceremony has ended. The winners, please come with us to take a bath and prepare to have an audience with the Elven King. The most crucial moment had finally arrived. Chapter 1843. This was an extremely grand yet somewhat dim hall. Pieces of elven ores hung on the walls of the hall, emitting a faint light. In the deepest part of the hall, there was a door. The door wasn't grand, but it was quite ancient and gave off a feeling of a long history. Noah stepped into the hall with powerful footsteps. After looking around, Noah's gaze fell on the door in the deepest part of the hall. Next to Noah, Claire, Linley, Phaeana, and Alice appeared one after another. Besides, just like Noah, the group of young ladies fixed their gazes on the ancient door almost immediately. Looking at the door that seemed to have been there since ancient times, Claire couldn't help but murmur. Is that the door to the Hall of True Sacrifice? At this moment, Noah and the others had changed their evening gowns into the uniforms of the Elven Academy. Meeting the Elven King was a matter of supreme honor. At least, it was definitely so for the people of this world. Originally, under such circumstances, Noah and the others wouldn't be overboard even if they wore extremely expensive and luxurious clothes. However, as the winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival, the Elven envoys had to wear the competition's attire when meeting the Elven King. Therefore, Noah and the others were still wearing the Elven Academy's uniforms. The pure white uniform seemed to reflect light under the illumination of the elven oars in the hall, appearing extremely conspicuous. However, Noah and the others' gazes were fixed on the ancient door and didn't move away. Because that was the door to the Hall of True Sacrifice where the Elven King resided. Just as Noah and the others were staring at the door, a series of orderly footsteps sounded from behind them, entering the ears of Noah and the others. The group immediately came back to their senses and turned their heads to look behind them. They saw 5 elven concubines wearing the highest ceremonial attire neatly lined up and walked in. That was not a phenomenon that had been rehearsed or deliberately produced. As elven concubines who had always practiced the divine music of ceremonies and performed the highest level of dance for the Elven King, the uniformity of their steps had long been engraved into the instincts of these girls. They could achieve such formality and pleasing to the eye without any deliberate effort. Naturally, Laetia was also present among the 5 elven maidens. In such a formal occasion, Rexia looked as solemn and holy as she did during the sacrificial ceremony. She exuded a noble and elegant temperament. Immediately after, the 5 fairy maidens bowed to Noah and his group, who were the winners. Then, as if she was the representative, Laetia took a step forward. Laetia's gaze slowly swept over Noah's group. She smiled and said, "Everyone, it's time to meet the Elf King. Have you all decided on your wishes?" Claire, Lindsley, Frianna, and Alice did not answer. Instead, they all focused their gazes on Noah. All of a sudden, the gazes of the elven concubines all gathered on Noah. Being stared at by 5 of the noblest fairy maidens in the continent, even the king of a country would be nervous, right? However, Noah acted as if he did not feel anything and nodded calmly. "We've decided on our wishes." That's right. They had decided on their wishes. From the beginning, Noah and his group only had one wish. Unfortunately, it was a wish that could not be revealed to anyone. Including Laetia. Including the fairy maidens. Claire, Lindsley, Frianna, and Alice's expressions were somewhat tense. The girls were probably worried that Laetia would ask Noah about the contents of his wishes. However, this worry was unnecessary. "Is that so?" Laetia nodded understandingly and then pointed to the door in the deepest part of the hall. "Then, everyone, please go through that door." Noah and his group once again turned their gazes to the door in the deepest part of the hall. Behind that door is a special place that is separated from the normal space. The front part is a corridor that extends endlessly. Through that corridor, you will reach the Hall of True Sacrifice and meet the Elf King. Laetia explained. Along the way, there will be forks in the corridor, but please do not step into them. In the past, several winners of the Fairy Sword Dance Festival stepped into the forks and lost their way. In the end, they disappeared in the cracks of the dimension and never appeared again. Everyone, please be careful. The expressions of the group of girls became even more tense. They probably did not expect that just an audience would be life-threatening. Only Noah slightly narrowed his eyes and nodded coldly. "We understand." "That's good." Laetia seemed to feel relieved from the bottom of her heart. She smiled again and then bowed to Noah and his group. "Then, congratulations on getting your wish." Behind Laetia, the other 4 fairy concubines also bent down and bowed. Only then did Noah cast his gaze towards the group of girls and smiled slightly. "All right, let's go." Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice all nodded in agreement. At the next moment, under Noah's lead, the group of people walked toward the door in the deepest part of the hall with clear footsteps that echoed in the surroundings. Gotcha! Almost at the same time, the ancient door in the deepest part of the hall suddenly made a strange sound. Then, it gradually opened. The scene that appeared in front of Noah and his group was the same as what Lacia had described. It was a corridor that extended endlessly. There were indeed forks in the corridor. There were no walls around him. Instead, he was surrounded by a colorful space that was constantly twisting. At first glance, it looked like a corridor that was suspended in the colorful sky. It was quite beautiful. However, behind this magnificence, there was a hidden danger to life. If it was only Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice, the four of them would definitely be nervous facing this corridor, right? However, Noah continued to walk in front as though he was not lost at all. His footsteps did not stop at all, and he continued to walk in the direction of the corridor. The back of the figure standing in front of the girls made them feel an uncontrollable courage. They all made up their minds and followed behind Noah. Thus, under the witness of the 5 fairy maidens, Noah and his group stepped into the infinite corridor. Rumble. With a rumble, the ancient doors suddenly closed. The entire hall once again returned to an indescribable silence. In the infinite corridor that seemed to have no end, Noah and his group did not know how long they had walked. Although there were forks in the road, and some of them even appeared suddenly under the gaze of Noah and his group, Noah and his group never deviated from the direction and kept moving forward. In such a different space, even the sound of footsteps was not allowed, so Noah and his group walked in silence. Along the way, no one spoke. Instead, with a determined expression, under Noah's lead, they kept moving forward, forward, forward. At a certain moment, Noah stopped. At the same time, Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice all stopped as well. This was because a huge door had suddenly appeared in front of everyone. It was as if a huge door had suddenly appeared and stood there. Gotcha! At the same time, the heavy door opened by itself, and the scene behind the door was imprinted into the eyes of the group. What appeared there was a huge staircase. The staircase extended upward, as if reaching into the sky, and connected to a high platform. On the high platform, there were 5 jade thrones. On the thrones, balls of shining light seemed to be suspended there, emitting a dazzling strong light. Looking at the balls of light sitting on the jade thrones, Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice held their breaths. Noah's eyes also flickered, and as if talking to himself, he whispered, "Is that the Fairy King?" Yes. That was the Fairy King. He governed the elements of the world. He stood at the top of the world. He controlled the hegemony of the world. Like a god, he was revered by all the lives in the human world and the elemental world. Chapter 1844. Clank. Dazzling light shone from the balls of light hovering above the jade thrones, illuminating the entire hall of true sacrifice. That light was like the most dazzling color in the world, reverberating non-stop. How many people would believe such a dazzling light? In that dazzling light, there was endless darkness and endless madness hidden within. In the next second, a grand and solemn voice resounded in the entire hall of true sacrifice. "Your sword dance is truly spectacular. We can grant your wish through a miracle to repay your sword dance. What request do you have for us?" That voice seemed to be able to shake the space. The voice carried unparalleled godly might and reverberated in the huge hall of true sacrifice. The moment this voice sounded, Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice all trembled. It was as if an instinct from the deepest part of their bodies was glowing, making the girls all want to kneel down. In the past, the winners of the Elven Sword Dance Festival had to immediately kneel and declare their wish to the Elven King. Then, that wish would be fulfilled under the execution of miracle system. However, just as Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice were about to kneel, Noah lifted his foot and walked forward without any reason. Noah! Noah! The girls' hearts all trembled. Because Noah didn't kneel and walked forward as if ignoring the Elven King's voice, it was an absolute blasphemy. And the Elven King seemed to think so too. The entire space of the Hall of Sacrifice suddenly trembled. An extremely terrifying pressure filled the air, spreading in all directions. Among the balls of light hovering above the jade thrones, there were 3 balls of light that emitted a shocking godly might. That shocking pressure and divine might made the hearts of the 4 girls, Claire, Linley, Fianna, and Alice, shrink. Their charming faces turned deathly pale in an instant. Only Noah didn't seem to feel anything. His dark and deep eyes stared at the balls of light on the jade thrones, and fixed his gaze on the 3 balls of light that emitted a shocking pressure. Lotus said that the Holy Elven King's seat was empty. And the Water Elven King was already liberated. There were only 3 Elven Kings left. Then, it was clear which jade thrones the 3 Elven Kings were on. Looking at the source of the pressure, it was clear. Thus, a burst of violent godly might energy burst out from Noah's body like a burning flame. On the back of Noah's hand, the elven seal emitted an unprecedentedly dazzling light, illuminating the entire space. Then, Noah began to chant. Cold Steel Queen, demon-slaying holy sword, turn into a sword of steel and bestow me with godly power. It was the incantation to summon the demon slayer. Divine starlight, lightning of salvation, wisdom of the goddess, indestructible steel, sword, appear in my hand. That was the incantation to summon the heavenly sword of salvation. Under the solemn and sacred incantation, a silver flash and a strong platinum light burst out from the elven seal on the back of Noah's hand, turning into a shiny silver holy sword and a dazzling platinum divine sword. Noah held them tightly in his hand. Shocking godly might energy poured into the holy sword and divine sword, making the silver light and platinum light look like 2 small suns, emitting extremely dazzling light. It was also at this moment that the pressure permeating the space suddenly stagnated. Bang! On the jade thrones, among the 3 balls of light emitting a shocking pressure, a burst of muffled explosions that made the space tremble. Then, a strange phenomenon occurred. An incomparably terrifying flame. A hair-raising hurricane. An extremely violent impact. They surged out from the 3 light clusters that sat on the jade throne. In an instant, they shook the entire space and swept out. Then, an extremely orderly voice rang out from the space. Die! As soon as the voice fell, terrifying flames, hair-raising hurricanes, and extremely violent impact surged down from the 3 jade thrones. Wherever the flames passed, the atmosphere was evaporated. Wherever the hurricanes passed, an ear-piercing sound echoed. Wherever the impact passed, the stairs trembled. The highest level of power of the 3 attributes of fire, wind, and earth turned into a torturous torment that took away a person's life. Like a monstrous wave of flames, hurricanes, and impact, it surged down from above. That power was definitely not something that a human could resist. Once touched, just like the heartless voice that echoed in the space a second ago, there was only one outcome. Death. Unfortunately, when faced with the shocking waves of fire, wind, and impact that were like monstrous waves, Noah's footsteps continued to move forward without stopping for a single moment. Only a voice slowly sounded from Noah's body. Avesta, activate. Dazzling starlight gradually emerged from Noah's body. At this moment, in the depths of Noah's heart, the cosmic sea, which no longer had the stone plate that represented authority and sovereignty, began to riot. Counteracted in turn. Simulated star map, another cosmology. The emerging starlight turned into an extremely terrifying power and shook Noah's body. Avesta. It could imitate the enemy's cosmology. Except for the human's cosmology, the power of other existences could be imitated and integrated into one's own simulated star map, another cosmology. This simulated star map, another cosmology, which could not be used in the world of fairy's tale, was now finally used by Noah. At this moment, under the power of the simulated star map, another cosmology, the power of the three elf kings of fire, wind, and earth all turned into waves of fluctuations and poured into Noah's body. Noah's aura suddenly rose steadily and climbed to the top, easily surpassing the elf kings. If it was said that the elven king was like a god, and his level in the box could be listed in the 4 digits, then with the power of the 3 elven kings, Noah's power had risen to an extremely terrifying level. Faintly, it had already reached the 3 digits, and the trend of breaking through the 4 digits. The astonishing power fluctuations caused the raging flames, wind, and impact from the jade throne to stagnate, as if they were stirred up by an invisible big hand. Bang! In the muffled sound of an explosion, Noah fiercely stomped on the ground, creating a shock wave. Under the situation where the ground was crushed, he turned into a streak of light and violently rushed up. In the next instant, the streak of light violently collided with the raging flames, wind, and impact waves. Poochie! Accompanied by the sound of tearing silk, the streak of light that soared into the sky was like a sharp knife, fiercely tearing apart the terrifying raging flames, the hair-raising wind, and the extremely violent impact waves formed by the 3 huge waves. Noah, who had turned into a streak of light, faced the raging flames, wind, and impact waves head-on. Finally, he broke through the 3 terrifying forces and violently shot to the front of the high platform. Absolute sword skill. Formbreaker Ardent Flower Spiral Sword Dance 72 consecutive strikes. That was the highest number of consecutive strikes that Noah could display at the moment. Wang! The Demon Slayer and Heavenly Sword elven magic equipment glowed brightly like never before. The Silver Holy Sword and the Platinum Heavenly Sword turned into a torrential storm of slashes. Like a continuous sword formation formed by streaks of sword light, it instantly enveloped the 3 balls of light that were emitting a terrifying aura. Poochie poochie poochie. The slashes that turned into sword light swept past the balls of light one by one, and in the midst of the tearing sound, the balls of light were slashed apart one by one. Bang! Suddenly, the balls of light exploded one after another. Chapter 1845. Bang! In an extremely uniform muffled explosion, the light balls sitting on the jade throne all exploded like fireworks, turning into bursts of light particles and dissipating in the air. Under the combo storm of Demon Slayer and Heavenly Sword of Salvation, even the elf kings were cut open alive. As the light balls exploded one by one, they disappeared one after another. Noah could clearly feel that his combo all hit the target, and each hit the elf kings hidden under the light balls. In other words, Noah had successfully liberated the remaining fire elf kings, wind elf kings, and earth elf kings. Almost at the same time, the powerful force surging in Noah's body began to dissipate little by little. The power from the 3 elf kings all dissipated one by one because the target of their imitation disappeared. The starlight surging on the surface of Noah's body dimmed little by little. In the depths of Noah's heart, the cosmic sea that represented another cosmology also calmed down little by little, restoring its original vastness and tranquility. This phenomenon told Noah. The elf kings were indeed all liberated. At that moment, Noah tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and retreated rapidly like a phantom. In an instant, he swept down the long flight of stairs and returned to the side of the group of girls. Only then did Claire, Lindsley, Fayanna, and Alice react. Success, success. Lindsley couldn't help but cheer. The elf kings are all liberated. Claire, Lindsley, and Alice also looked surprised and couldn't help but run toward Noah. Although it was extremely unbelievable that Noah actually defeated the joint attack of the three elf kings in an instant, at this moment, the joy of the result temporarily overshadowed the shock, causing the girls to cheer. However, Noah felt that something was wrong. Thus, Noah yelled at the group of girls without even turning his head. "Don't come over." Claire, Lindsay, Fayanna, and Alice suddenly stopped in their tracks, and the joy on their faces also froze. Noah raised his eyes and stared at the 5 empty jade thrones above. His dark and deep eyes gradually condensed. An indescribable heavy atmosphere began to spread in the air. The entire space returned to a state of silence, giving people an extremely oppressive feeling. Then, in Noah's heart, Ashtar and Athena's voices sounded at the same time. "Master! Be careful. Something is coming." The moment Ashtar and Athena's voices sounded, Noah's pupils also suddenly shrank. The next moment, the jade thrones in the deepest part of the hall of sacrifice suddenly trembled. Hum. Accompanied by trembling sounds that sounded like mournful wails, existences that did not belong to this world surged out from the jade thrones. Seeing this scene, Noah's eyes condensed again. Claire, Lindsay, Fayanna, and Alice looked at the things gushing out from the jade thrones. They all trembled, and their expressions changed drastically. What gushed out from the jade thrones was dense darkness. It didn't refer to the pure darkness, but it was like a turbid current that could engulf people. It emitted an ominous, evil, decaying, and terrifying aura. The darkness was like pitch-black magma, turning into turbid currents that continuously gushed out from the jade thrones, forming a wave that flowed down the stairs. That scene was like a pitch-black mudslide rushing down, making one's hair stand on end. Feeling the ominous, evil, decaying, terrifying, and even curse-like aura contained in the dark turbid current, Claire, Lindsay, Fayanna, and Alice's pretty faces turned pale, and their bodies uncontrollably retreated. "What? What is that?" Fayanna couldn't help but let out a sorrowful cry. "What? What a terrifying feeling." Lindsay's voice also changed. "Is that the otherworldly darkness?" Alice clenched her trembling teeth. Sister, did you see something like this back then?" Claire's whole body trembled. Even Noah couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw the dense darkness gushing out from the jade thrones like black mud. "It's like the evils of this world." Noah had seen the same scene a long time ago. In the world of the Type Moon, during the Holy Grail War, all the evils of this world gushed out from the contaminated Holy Grail. It was exactly the same as the scene in front of him. However, all the evils of this world were just pure curses. If one was swallowed up, as long as one was a human, there was only one outcome: death. However, the otherworldly darkness in front of him wouldn't curse people to death. Instead, it would cause elves to go crazy. Even the Elven King couldn't avoid it. He bitterly resisted, but in the end, he was swallowed up and completely lost to madness. However, unfortunately, this kind of power is useless against me. The otherworldly darkness was undoubtedly a kind of power. Since that was the case, that thing was destined to be useless against Noah. Without mentioning anything else, with Avesta's another cosmology, as long as Noah imitated the cosmology of the otherworldly darkness and used it as a mirror, he would be able to counteract that power. Since Noah didn't do anything and rushed into the otherworldly darkness, nothing would happen. Because Noah's physique was immune to all negative powers. The otherworldly darkness happened to be among them. At that moment, Noah raised his head and stared at the jade throne surging with dense darkness. "Is that the door?" The otherworldly darkness came from neither the human world nor the elemental elves' world. In that case, to come to the elemental elves' world from the otherworldly darkness, there must be a door that can be passed through. Just like how coming to the elemental elves' world from the human world required a door, the darkness from the otherworldly darkness also required a door. Chapter 1846. Glug glug glug. The thick darkness that surged out from the jade seats on the high platform was like boiling water, making strange noises. Under such circumstances, the pitch-black turbid flow that flowed down the stairs also surged violently, making people's hearts palpitate. Noah, who was rushing in the direction of the jade seats, discovered the threat behind him before the group of girls cried out in alarm. The turbid flow that was like black magma turned into a boiling wave. Like a giant hand, it covered the direction of Noah, who was flying at high speed. In the next second, it was imprinted into Noah's eyes. An ominous, evil, decaying, and terrifying aura constantly emerged from the thick darkness. The intensity of the aura was so strong that even Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice could clearly feel it, not to mention Noah, who had superb senses. However, with a constitution that was not affected by any negative energy, Noah did not need to fear the thick darkness. However, if he was swallowed by the thick darkness, then even if Noah was not affected in any way, his movements would be obstructed and he would not be able to rush to the jade seats. Therefore, Noah could not ignore the threat behind him. Immediately, Noah poured divine power into the holy sword and divine blade in his hands. Absolute sword skill. Form 3 Shadow Moon Dance. In an instant, the silver holy sword and platinum divine blade turned into an arc, like moonlight, flashing through space. Poochie. With a ripping sound, the thick darkness that surged in Noah's direction like a huge wave was directly cut apart by the demon slayer and heavenly sword. Like a black ocean that was forcefully cut apart, it was cut in half at the waist. However, the thick darkness that was cut in half did not follow the gravity and smash into the pitch-black magma sea below. Instead, it directly floated there, trembling once again. With a twist, it turned into waves of pitch-black turbid flow. The turbid flow was like a huge shadow, mixed with ominous and evil fluctuations. It was like a black net that enveloped Noah's direction. Immediately, Noah's location was covered by a shadow. The thick darkness also fell from the sky, one by one fiercely covering Noah below. Absolute sword skill. Form 3 Shadow Moon Dance. Noah used the same trick again. His whole body that was suspended in the air started to spin like a top. The demon slayer and heavenly sword turned into sharp sword light, violently slashing apart. Poochie poochie poochie. The thick darkness that fell from the sky like a black net was suddenly ruthlessly cut apart by the moonlight like slashes, exploding like water splashes. However, the thick darkness was still not destroyed. This time, the splash-like darkness squirmed and turned into black lumps, shooting towards Noah like bullets. Noah, who had just cut apart the thick darkness, had no way to dodge. Bang 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 bang. Amidst a series of muffled sounds, Noah was sent flying backward as if he had been hit by a heavy rock. The friction between him and the air caused a sharp piercing sound to resound. Noah! Claire, Linsley, Fayanna, and Alice all cried out in alarm. No! We can't watch anymore. Linsley bit her lip and shouted loudly. We have to help him. That's right. Alice agreed with Linsley without hesitation. Noah is fighting for the world, for everyone. We can't just watch from the side. But what can we do? Fayanna said anxiously and helplessly. We're not as powerful as Noah. Even if we help, we can't help. Even if that's the case, we can only go. Claire summoned her flame whip, her red eyes staring fixedly at the thick darkness. Noah is fighting. Even my sister wants to fight the otherworld darkness. I can't just watch. Linsley and Alice both nodded repeatedly. Fayanna clenched her teeth and nodded immediately. Okay. I'll give you my blessing. Claire, Linsley, and Alice looked at each other and smiled. They all took out their elven equipment. However, Just as the group of young ladies was about to rush forward, Noah's voice sounded again. "Don't come over." Noah hovered in the air. He stared at the dense darkness that was still surging down from the jade throne and spoke in a deep voice. "That darkness can make the Elven King go crazy, so it can make other elves go crazy. If you rashly barge in, you'll make all your contracted elves go crazy. Then it'll be terrible. In fact, if it wasn't for the continuous infusion of divine power into the demon slayer and the heavenly sword, as well as the fact that Ashtar and Athena's strength were equally extraordinary, Noah's contracted elves would have gone crazy after coming into contact with the darkness several times. Even so, Ashtar and Athena exhausted all their strength to resist the erosion of the otherworld darkness. They didn't even have time to say a word. And this was under the condition that Noah had been continuously providing divine power support. If Noah stopped the infusion of divine power, perhaps Ashtar and Athena wouldn't be able to resist the erosion of the otherworld darkness. Even Ashtar and Athena, who could rival the Elven King, were in such a state, let alone the contracted elves of Claire, Lindsley, Fayanna, and Alice. Although the contracted elves of the girls were all high-ranked elves, they were still a distance away from the highest-ranked elves. Their strength hadn't even reached the demonic level and was far from the demon god level, let alone the mythical level. Ashtar and Athena's strength was above the mythical level, but they were still having a hard time resisting. Once elves who weren't even at the demonic level came into contact with the darkness, they would definitely go crazy. Therefore, Noah couldn't let the girls get involved. "You don't have to interfere. It's not like I don't have a way," Noah said to the group of girls without turning his head as he stared at the thick darkness that was surging towards him. "You just have to protect yourselves. If anything happens, immediately turn around and run. Do you understand?" Claire, Lindsley, Fayanna, and Alice's high spirits suddenly disappeared as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them. However, Noah's words were reasonable and couldn't be refuted. At that moment, the girls could only grit their teeth and stand on the spot, their faces filled with unwillingness. Hovering in the air, Noah took a deep breath as he looked at the endless surge of otherworld darkness that was about to flow out of the stairs and touch the hall where the girls were. "Ashtar. Athena. Let's decide the victor in one breath." Ashtar and Athena didn't say anything. However, the demon slayer and heavenly sword in Noah's hands blossomed with dazzling radiance, illuminating the entire hall of sacrifice. Feeling the divine power flowing from the demon slayer and heavenly sword, Noah's lips curled up. Immediately, Noah's figure shot up like a meteor, rushing toward the jade seats on the high platform. Whing! The dense darkness, which was like black lava, immediately began to rage. Just like before, it surged and set off waves after waves of black waves that surged towards Noah, who was flying over in an imposing manner. Looking at the thick darkness surging toward him like a monstrous wave, Noah didn't reduce his speed, but instead flew higher and higher. Avesta, activate. Counteracted in turn. Simulating another cosmology. Dazzling starlight burst out from Noah's body, mixed with silver and platinum flashes, shining brightly. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.